a stretch to get this, a magic 8 ball. My impression of Qual, because I was really on the quant side back then, is that Qual and Quant were more divorced, if you will. Strong word.
How those instruments were analyzed to see, whether those.
And there'd be a reason for that. Maybe there are very informed decisions or hypotheses, I should say, from other research, other marketplace information, from stakeholders and so forth, that it makes sense to do the quant first. As long as there's human beings on the planet, they're going to want to talk to live people, let's hope most of the time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Collaborative Canvas. I'm your host, Ankesh Saxena, and today we have an incredibly insightful episode ahead. To help us unpack the incredible transformation of market research over the years, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Sue Collin. Sue is a senior VP and director of qualitative research, RTI research, a true champion of human stories, and a master of helping marketers and their stakeholders scrape off the surface and dig deep into the consumer truth. With her expertise in both qualitative and quantitative research, Sue has an incredible ability to turn data into meaningful stories that solve real business challenges and help companies rise to the new heights. In today's episode, we are going to deep dive into Sue's journey, starting with her pivotal shift from quantitative to qualitative research, and explore how this transition has shaped the way she has served her clients today. And with that, we'll also look at the evolution of the research tools and methods, the rise of the digital technology, and the role of AI in the research, and Sue's prediction for the future of the industry. So sit back and relax. And we go into this journey where we have an absolute pleasure to have Sue on the show. Sue.
Thank you, Ankash. What a wonderful introduction. And I think it sounds like we have a lot to talk about when we talk about the evolution of market research. Wow, what a journey. And I appreciate you having me here. And I wanted to let you know that in your intro about me, about scraping off something to get to the insights for the clients, I actually use that because I'm a baker. So I always think about the real reason we eat cakes or cupcakes is just to get to the, get the frosting, and then we go deeper. So that's how I think about what I'm doing now, especially in my qualitative research practice. So thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for the show to come on the show. And since you just mentioned, when I saw your profile, I was kind of very inquisitive about, understanding. I've seen a lot of people, moving from the qualitative to quantitative, and a bit of, staying back at the quantitative because I'm kind of a quant guy. This journey has been immense and has been very typical for me because I don't generally see people getting into a moderation mode. So what led you transition from quantitative to qual research, and how this has shifted better for you to serve the clients?
Yeah, it was certainly a journey, and it starts with COVID. COVID obviously impacted a lot of people, many very negatively, and also impacted businesses. And it impacted my quantitative practice at RTI Research. And I had an opportunity to think about what was next. I've been with RTI for a very long time, had wonderful opportunities and still do. And we've always done qualitative research. Much, not all, was done with consultants. And so I opened a shingle. I'm the director of qualitative research at RTI, and went straight for training at the wonderful Riva Institute, and really took all of what I know regarding market research design and dealing with people, whether they're clients or consumers. After a quantitative taste test, you talk to consumers and ask them some additional questions, sort of a mini qual, if you will, and just talking to everyday people in the industry and strangers even. So I would say that the shift was relatively easy for me. That doesn't mean there were difficult bumps, and I continued to learn every day, as we all do when we have conversations. I am sure I'm going to learn from you and your questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got a lot of questions for you because when I saw that you've been moving into the qualitative and being very inquisitive about understanding that journey, because even during the podcast, that's kind of a moderation that I'm actually doing, asking questions, and I feel that I'm still in a very nascent stage where understanding qualitative by large would probably be a lot of learnings for me, to be honest. I mean, I've been a quant guy throughout, so I know the things around quant, but when we were last talking about this podcast, and I got to know that you learned from people who actually been the forefronters of starting this research thing in the quant in those old days. So there are a lot of things which happened over a decades, and in fact a few decades. So let me go back and check how back those days, when you were learning, when you were into the phase of learning market research, what key tools and methods that you used, and how did that they shape the industry at that time?
Tons of tools like there are today, and some are even the same, if you can believe that, but they've adjusted, as you know. I'll just speak to a few of them and then talk about shaping the industry, because that in the end is what it's about, to then serve our clients. Telephone surveys, shopping mall interviews, both still there, maybe less so now with online research, of course. Scanner data, that's still there. Back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, I would hear our clients talking about scanner data all the time. I'm sure they're still using it. I don't hear much about that now. That doesn't, again, this is my experience, obviously. Mail surveys, that was all the rage, and we would stuff the envelopes and put the dollar in. $1, thank you. Not so much today, but believe it or not, we're doing a mail survey right now. So less of that. Qual research, of course. My impression of Qual, because I was really on the quant side back then, is that Qual and Quant were more divorced, if you will. Strong word, but I recall clients and just collaborators being in the camp. It was one or the other. Perhaps they didn't touch like they certainly do now in blended research, and we'll probably talk about that later. In-home interviews, that still happens, perhaps differently now with the online tools. Back in the day, I don't know how many people realize this. There was actually canvassing with very strict sampling requirements in neighborhoods with maps. There were physical maps. There wasn't Google back then to go online. And people, data collectors would go and knock on doors to do interviews. Some of that still happens, particularly with political polling and maybe some other research now, but far less so. And lots of mystery shopping that happens as well, again, perhaps in a different way. At that time, my impression and my experience was that clients and research departments, as they were known then versus insights perhaps now, corporate researchers and the way that the departments were set up is that they had the time and the inclination to really learn about, as we say here in the States, how the sausage was made. They really wanted to know, what's the reason we're doing this many interviews? What are the stats? So on and so forth. And that translated to much larger studies. There were larger budgets. So there were larger studies, larger sample sizes, more time in that it took to do a research study. Very different from now, of course, depending on what the research is. And that all shaped the industry in that there was really a focus on rigor. I'm not saying there isn't today, but it was a different kind of rigor in tandem with our clients. In fact, some of the best and biggest companies in their categories, like Pepsi, like General Foods, who was now part of Kraft, General Mills, Procter and Gamble, and others had, maybe some still do, research centers of excellence where they really trained their corporate researchers. And I was a direct beneficiary of that, as well as some of the colleagues I still work with today, because we were trained by the best, because we work with those clients. We learned along with them about all of these research methods and the rigor that goes along with it. And now we have changing roles. So today we have people who are not trained in research sitting in insights roles. Or in a lot of cases, when we're doing studies, we're dealing with stakeholders in totally different disciplines. And it's not just marketing, it's operations, it's finance, it's packaging, so many other people. So that all shaped what's going on today.
When you just mentioned that you have to mail the survey and you have to keep $1 into it. I was just having that illusion that when we used to send out invitations for the online surveys, we used to keep a few dollars there. Sometimes if depending upon who we are reaching out to. So that was the image that I eventually created when you just mentioned. But there's one quick question out of the blue. I just realized when you said you used to work with brands, PepsiCo, and General Mills. There's always one question I always ask to people about when they talk about data collection. When we do online surveys, and since the technology has been so well crafted these days, we still look at doing the trend analysis. And we look at trackers, and we took look at the overall trends in the tracker. So I go back 98, my own days, when I used to do field interviews. I had no clue whether these trackers are working or not, but I was doing this survey for automobile giant those days, and I was given a questionnaire, and I just collected the interviews and give it to my manager. How those how those instruments were analyzed to see whether those, again, the same respondent would not come or will come. I'm not too sure, because that's again the question I would ask. How would you see those analysis come out, from a brand perspective where you're doing a tracker study?
Well, a lot of people like acronyms today, BHT, brand health trackers. I don't know if they were called that back then, but there's so many different types of tracking studies, as you probably know, whether they're looking at advertising or looking at the overall brand health, they're looking at some specific pre-post activity in the marketplace. And I think for the most part, trackers have been they serve to look backwards. How well have we done? Where are we at that point in time? Perhaps what do we need to do differently to gain awareness, conversion, shift our brand perception to what we think we want to be, and how are we doing versus competition. So many different things looking over time. And then, of course, there's a whole idea of, are we doing continuous tracking? And these are still questions today in very fast moving markets. And I would argue that today, much of everything is fast moving. Or are we doing point in time intervals, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year? Some companies still do just a once a year look. Perhaps that's not enough. And perhaps there's ways to supplement that with additional learning, either from those tracking responses or separate research to get to a more holistic view. Have I answered the question for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think you actually gave me another question out of it, because you transition from qualitative to quantitative, and from quantitative to qualitative, actually. So I wanted to again understand, considering there's a rise of digital technology, especially internet, which has transformed the way market research has been conducted over the so many decades. Um, there's been saying that, let's do the quant first, validate it with the qualitative, and then do a quant. How does this whole journey for you is been, because you've seen, the best from the industry to work with, and now you're working, for the brands, and this whole concept is aged old with these so many technologies around, different analytical tools. How is this working for you?
Oh, well, I think it's working great for me. You'll have to ask the people I work with, my collaborators, whether they're my internal partners or external partners. I think what's happening is, what I believe is, because I have all of this quantitative background, I'm always thinking about how the qualitative research will be used either in a successive study, which might be quant, or reversed. How does the quantitative research, what do we need to do a deeper dive from the quant research into qual? So, some very basic examples, if we're doing quantitative first, and there'd be a reason for that. Maybe there are very informed decisions or hypotheses, I should say, from other research, other marketplace information, from stakeholders and so forth, that it makes sense to do the quant first. And from that, we might learn this concept. Concept A does far better over concept B, very simplistic. All right, but it was quant research. It was a 15-minute interview max. We really need to drill down into the why. Why does it do so well? And what should be the messaging that will most resonate with it, or the reason to believe, the principles of the reasons people will want to go out and try this product. Or in inverse, and that was just one example, in inverse, it could be total exploration. We have clients come to us often in categories and brands and say, we really haven't taken a deep look at our category and our competition in quite a while, years, and we know things have changed dramatically. Just take a look at the grocery shelves. Let's do some exploration before we do anything with quant, because we're not really sure where we need to go, where we want to go, where do we sit with competition. So along with my internal stakeholders, so I'll work in tandem with my partners at RTI, many of whom are doing the quantitative research, and I'll be the consult with them, either with the client or in separate discussions, talking about what's the discovery we need to do with the client to understand where are they today? What are some of the hypotheses going on in terms of the competition? And what do the internal stakeholders think? Sometimes it's qualitative, short qualitative discussions with them. What do they think? What are their hypotheses? And from that, we'll design a qualitative research project to help inform where we are today with this brand and what should we be considering next.
And initially, during the conversation around the first question, you mentioned that we'll be talking about the blend. So does the blend is part of Qual, Quant, and Qual, or is it like Quant, Qual, and Qual, Quant, Qual, and Quant?
Everything above, multiple choice. I'll take it from this menu, and this menu. We design, and I've always worked with people to design projects against the business objectives. So there can be one leg, there can be two legs, there could be three legs, and they can be in totally different orders. I mean, I've worked on research where it's Qual, which informs the quant, and maybe that is informing on consumer or customer vocabulary. Could be something like that, could be other things. And then learning from the quant goes into a deep dive. Maybe it's to profile consumers or customers further, and we've had it other ways. I think the point is that nowadays we're seeing much more what we call blended research. It's really very intentional to include more than one type of research in the initiative.
And so since again talking about different types of research that we do, there've been elements of a lot of things have changed when it comes to technology. There's a big data, we've been talking about. There's been artificial intelligence. The evolution is now, we're seeing it as endless. People are talking about synthetic data, synthesized data. How this has impacted the decision-making ability of a business nowadays? Because, we have seen trends. We are now working on those new trends, and things have been rapidly changing. What is that, overall impact with the brands?
Well, there's the practical part of it in decision making and doing research, starting with that, and then there's the outcome of the research. I mean, the rise of digital, whether you AI, but before that, just online research, plain old online research, I'll call it. There's no doubt that speed and scale and lower costs have made a huge impact, and often for the positive in perhaps some brands considering doing research that they wouldn't have done prior. Also, beyond working with brand consultancies and research shops like our own, their online tools have made research accessible in a different way to corporate personnel, corporate teams, where they're either doing do-it-yourself tools, or they're doing creating and sometimes holding and managing online communities that they've created out of their customer bases. So there's that decision making to figure out the kind of research that they want to do. On the other side of that, oh, and I should just say that the rise of the online world, there's lots of favorable things that have come up out of that, as I've talked about. And that includes more variety of sample sources. That includes being able to get to niche audiences and more diverse audiences. And with that, being able to talk to customers or clients about, have you thought about who your customer is? If your customer includes lots of Hispanics or other types of consumers, perhaps we should be interviewing them as well and not excluding them, because we can get to them now. That's not to say we couldn't before, but the rise of digital tools has helped so much with that. But there's been lots of downsides as well that can be overcome, and research being commoditized, and I'm going to cue procurement departments with that, as if what we're selling is paper clips. And I'm here to say, I'm probably not the first one, and I won't be the last. We're not selling paper clips, but there are shareholders, and don't get me on that bus. The point is that there's been a lot of changes, privacy concerns with online research, quality of responses. We used to think about professional respondents only. Now we think about bots. So there are pros and cons to it, but we march forward. And I think in the end, the evolution with digital has been great. As far as businesses really with decision making on either how they're going to do the research or what they're going to do with the research, it's going to really depend, and this is going on now, with how corporate environments, what their appetite is for risk taking. And I think some of that depends on the risk of the initiative. If you've got to make a decision on if you're going to expand your product line or totally change your industry leading formula, which is not only going to mean you're going to have new advertising, but you're also going to need to change up the plant lines. So totally different equipment and sourcing of materials. There are big risks involved there. So the question is, are you going to do research among real life consumers, or are you going to put something into AI? And I'm making this real simplistic here for illustrative purposes only. Are you going to put something into AI and ask them about, if we change from real chocolate to blended chocolate? I'm not a scientist. What's your reaction going to be? And use synthetic data for that. So people are using synthetic data. It has applications, certainly. Perhaps we might use it differently with, blending with real data. I say real data, live human data that we've collected. And I asked, if you're sitting at a corporate side and you're in the insights chair or the marketing chair, and the CEO asks, what's the source of this data? Now, again, some don't want to know how the sausage is being made, but perhaps with things with more risk, they do. What's the source of this data? Oh, it's synthetic data. Do you want to be the person who says that to the CEO? Maybe. It totally depends on that environment. And I think the question marks are out there. Companies today are using it, and there'll be more experimentation for it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned correctly, there are always a pros and cons to, anything which happens. So whether it's an evolution of technology into the market research world, having synthetic data, implementation of the AI, on a different benchmarking, assignments, people are using technologies. I think it's definitely a good shift. And you rightly mentioned, it totally depends. Some may accept synthetic data or synthesized data. Some may just simply wanted, humanized factor into it. I started my journey with, interviewing live people. So I'm kind of very inquisitive about, what people would be thinking, rather than I, rely on a data which is being said. But I think predictive analytics that I've been hearing, and prescriptive analytics, they've been changing the rules of the game, and kind of, technology is taking a say to this. And that comes to my last question to you. How do you predict, what will be the next major shift in the market research, say in the coming decade, and how will the businesses are preparing for themselves?
I'm glad you asked that, because I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm known for having let me stretch to get this, a magic 8 ball. And my magic 8 ball has been telling me the following, that there's going to be increased integration of AI. We're seeing this every day. I think businesses are thinking about what are the kinds of people we need today and tomorrow, and things continue to change rapidly. However, I think in the past, or I should say maybe 3 years or so, when we were seeing the AI explosion that we were aware of for marketers and insights people, the question was, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to my job? And now I think the questions are, what skill sets do I need to succeed moving forward? What tools does the company need to use? And where should we be using it today? And what can we thinking about experimenting to use it for tomorrow? I think there's continued focus, particularly with AI, on data privacy and ethics. And this sort of intersects with all the different regulations and rules around consumer data and privacy and standards that clients might have, on a case-by-case basis for consumer research or customer lists and so on. I think there will continue to be more multi-channel data sources, whether again it's from live interviewing, whether that's online or in person, with fed into AI for some synthetic data deep dives and so forth. I think also AI is coming into place for sure. I've seen it. We've used it for open-ended iterations and quant surveys where maybe a deep dive isn't needed, live moderator like myself isn't needed. I would hate to say that, but again, it's always about the business objectives and new collaborations between companies. Always, that's been going on for a while. We'll continue with traditional research consultancies plus we're collaborating with technology companies because that's where the power is in collaboration. Oftentimes 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3 in terms of the services that you can offer to your clients. And I feel that whether we're talking about B2B research or B2C research right now today, and I hope next week, next month, and at least for a little while, as long as there's human beings on the planet, they're going to want to talk to live people. Let's hope most of the time. We talk about today more than ever the importance of EQ skills, emotional intelligence, and that happens people to people like you and I are doing right now. I feel much more comfortable speaking to you, not only because you're you, but because you're live, Ankesh, versus speaking to AI or a made up person. And I think for now, live is here. Let's talk again in 3 months and see what happens.
So my fellow researchers or people who are kind of looking their career in market research, one thing is for sure, if you have this question that what kind of a research tool do I need, I think this podcast is definitely something that's going to help you out because even when I started my career in market research, I love talking to people. I love to be there, asking what they feel, how they feel, and then creating the stories around it. We, within this podcast, would like to thank Sue for sharing her incredible insights with us today. From her early days to in the industry to this cutting edge trends we're seeing now, her perspective on the evolution of market research is truly invaluable. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to her and she'll definitely be having, the encyclopedia of all the answers that you probably can think of those questions. She'll be happy to answer those. And I think it's safe to say that many of us will walk away from the conversation with a deeper understanding of how market research has transformed over the years and how we can prepare for what to come. So before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts or advice you'd like to share with businesses or market research, Sue, even professionals who are looking ahead to the next decade?
I would say for people entering the insights field, talk to people, find advocates to talk to, mentors to see where the trends are going. That's number one. There are lots of people who are very supportive in our community. And for businesses, rely on consultants. Hopefully it's my company, it might be another company. We are the ones that have ways to guide you through and really ask the questions, not dictate to clients and stakeholders how to do research, but rather collaborate together on what's the best thing to do to help move your business forward.
Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you again for joining us on the Collaborative Canvas, and to our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube, and follow us on social media for updates for upcoming episodes. Till then, stay curious, stay collaborative. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankesh.